Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome back to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and it is time for a review of the second quarter here of 2022 of World of Warships. As has become my routine, I suppose, every 3 months, we sit down, we talk about what's gone on in the previous quarter, and we give a quick look at the overall health of the game in terms of server populations. Concurrent players is about the only metric that we have from the outside looking in without Wargaming's internal metrics to kind of gauge how things are going, how is player interest being preserved and held. And so we like to do this about every 3 months to just kind of keep a check on things. It's getting pretty good now. I've got several years of historical data, so we're able to make some good comparisons to things. And so let's just get into it. So what we'll do is we'll start with a quick review of the patches that came out in the second quarter, just as a refresh of what we just went through. So, of course, mid-April, 11.3 came out, and we got the first super ships coming into the game, right? We got a Russian destroyer, American heavy cruiser, battleships, and the Japanese and German lines, a Japanese destroyer, a French heavy cruiser, and then, of course, everyone's favorite, ladies and gentlemen, that's right, we got super carriers. Ugh. But anyway, the super ships are here. They're not going away. This is going to sound really mean. About the only thing that I really like about super ships is that when I go to sell the line back, like to regrind it for research points or whatever, I don't lose the super ship. The super ship is like, it's like a tier 11 ship that's detached from the rest of the line. So I still can play that. So I can still have my Annapolis, for example. If I want to sell back my American heavies, I can still play Annapolis. So I can still get some of that nice high-tier experience without having to regrind the line or spend a bunch of free XP to get through it. That's about the only thing I like about these. I think this concept is... it's flawed. It's highly flawed. I can't spell early. Sorry for the typo. We got early access to the Italian destroyer continuing. That started, of course, in the previous patch, and then the early access early release continuing here in April. We had a new dockyard coming in with Tier 8 Pan American battleship Atlantico, which had a ridiculous secondary suite. Not the fastest battleship in the world, but a decently fun ship if you picked one up. We got a couple of new sessions of brawling. We got more visual improvements to the game. They've been doing a lot of this lately with maps, and I don't know if you guys have noticed, but there's like more scenery in the distance, like on some maps or so on and so forth. And then we got some very, very small balance tweaks. But these read like they're small, but in my mind, these are big because they signal Wargaming's the first time we've ever seen Wargaming in 7 years come back and change a ship's like inherent base characteristics in the way to balance it. And so Tashkent, Tier 9 Soviet Russian destroyer Tashkent, got a small buff to her draft. She now sits a little lower in the water. And of course, Tier 10 Russian cruiser, super cruiser Petropavlovsk got a little nerf to her draft. She now sits a little higher in the water. And it's taken us years I think, to finally convince them that these characteristics are important. Right? The draft on a ship, how much freeboard it has, is absolutely part of how you balance a ship. And finally, after a year and a half of complaining about Petro, the entire community, the world over complaining about Petro, we finally got like a meaningful nerf to the ship. Not, oh, we nerfed her detection by 200 meters, or, oh, we nerfed her radar by 4 seconds, or whatever. It was, no. We made the ship easier to kill. Thank God. Finally. I don't know about you guys, but fighting these things isn't nearly the nightmare it used to be. Once you flank them, they actually pretty reliably take solid damage in Citadel's broadside. And so, this was so long overdue. I'm so glad they finally got around to it. Took forever, but they got there. In mid-May, of course, 11.4 came out, and we went from one early access to the event, one early access event to the next one. That's kind of, again, become the way things go in the World of Warships these days. Just there's always a new ship line coming out, which is both good and bad, I think. So we had the French cruiser split. Of course, we've got these French super cruiser things, the split starting down at Tier 8. Although I guess technically if you want to count Toulon, which is a premium, it sort of starts at Tier 7. But that began back in mid-May. We got the full release of the Italian destroyer line. So all of those ships now freely available out of the tech tree, all the way up to Tier 10's Attilio Regolo. One of the best changes ever made to World of Warships, Epicenter left the game forever in 11.4, ladies and gentlemen. And this is, so many of us are just like, oh, thank God. I admit, I understand there's a few people out there that enjoyed Epicenter, and I admit I had the occasional good game in the format. But the biggest problem with it is that the way Epicenter was originally designed, way back when it was first added to the game, was that if you sat in the middle, nobody capped anything. So it became destroyers run to the middle, everybody else driving a toilet bowl circle around the edge, shooting into the middle, hoping to hit a destroyer or spotting a destroyer, until eventually somebody screws up and you can finally make progress in the game. Then they changed how Epicenter worked, and then it became like a race to get into the middle, because then each cap ring you could cap them individually. They were no longer linked, and that changed how the map played. But not everybody ever realized that they had changed how the map played. So he always constantly people yelling, "Destroyers, get into the middle!" And it's like, are you kidding? There's a radar cruiser in there. Are you on crack? Like, it was this game mode was always a bit of a mess. It's gone. Yay! Arms Race is here, and Arms Race for me comes up probably about, I don't know, once every 10 to 12 games, maybe not even that commonly. But bottom line is, it's a nice change. I like Arms Race. It's a different way to play. The only complaint I have about Arms Race, and I don't know that this necessarily is a complaint about the specific mode so much as it is a complaint about just warships in general, but Arms Race feels more steamroll-y, that's not a word, swingy, than even regular randoms do. You know how in randoms sometimes, once you go down 2 to 3 ships, it becomes very difficult to fight back into a game. You can do it, but like, it's rare. It's not common. Arms Race, in my mind, it exacerbates that problem, right? Because what happens is, as one team's destroyers are either better or win trades and they're able to pick up more buffs, the team that has more buffs starts to live longer and kill things faster, and then the steamroll just builds even quicker. I'm not yet decided if that's good or bad. I've been on both sides of that, right? And while at least it makes for sometimes quick losses as opposed to, this game won't end. I don't know. But I enjoy playing Arms Race more than I enjoy playing Epicenter. Arms Race is inherently more dynamic, and that alone makes it more interesting. Of course, Atlantico Dockyard continued onward. We had some really good mini-map improvements in 11.4. If you guys haven't checked these out, or you haven't figured this out in the last couple of months, you really should look into it. But now when you double-click on the mini-map, you can actually pinpoint a spot. And when you actually, how when you used to, you could put your mouse cursor over a ship and tell the opponents on your team, hey, shoot at this ship, right? Now I can literally double click that ship in the mini map and it sends that message into text. Hey, focus this target, focus that target, look over here, whatever. And I'm like, the mini map improvements have been really nice. They make communicating in randoms a lot better. We got another season of clan battles. It started up in mid-May, of course. The same basic thing we've been looking at. Tier 10, no carriers with some various ship limits. And they did change those limits as the season went on. We had a new season of ranked came in. Sub-testing kind of went on. There were a lot of changes to submarine commander skills. I will not belabor the point here. Every time I try to wrap my brain around submarines, something major mechanically changes, and it's like having to relearn the class all over again. At this point, I would have had to relearn how to play submarines 7 times. And I just honestly, I don't have that kind of time to dedicate to it, right? I'm a working professional with a regular job, and I just don't have, 30 hours a month to figure out how the hell to play submarines, only for them to go change it, 8 weeks later. So I'm just going to wait until they're done, and then I'll figure it out. And of course, we got Tier 10 premium German, quote unquote, battleship, battle cruiser thing, whatever. Mecklenburg was added to the armory for coal, if memory serves. Now, there were a ton of balance tweaks in this patch, so let's get into this real briefly. Henri got a rudder shift buff. Of course, this was the patch where the high-tier Pan-Asian destroyers, that's Shenyang, Changmu, and Yuyang, all got the torpedo reload booster consumable added, which was a huge thing to those ships. I think it really helps them. It gives them a little bit leg up, a little more firepower, and a little more teeth. I like that. Zorky, the tier 11 Russian super destroyer, got a torpedo range buff. So did the regular tech tree tier 10 Soviet destroyer Grozovoy, getting a torpedo range buff from 10 kilometers to 12 kilometers. Huge fan of that. Belfast 43, Hipper, and Tallinn, all tier 8 cruisers of varying types, some premium, some not, all got a main battery reload of about a half second apiece. Belfast 43, of course, is the only light cruiser on that list, but she has basically heavy cruiser reload in an attempt to balance the ship because of her smoke radar combo. I've never particularly cared for Belfast 43, but she can do good work in the right niche, and so this buff is not a terrible thing. A lot of nerfs coming down in this patch, right? So we got the American high-tier heavies. all got a nerf to their radar duration. So those all shorter now, usually 2 to 3 seconds apiece. Tier 8 Pan-Asian cruiser, barely added to the game. Harbin got a small nerf to her Sigma, which I don't really understand because that ship's not very good to begin with, in my opinion, but okay. Both of the super carriers, that's United States and Eagle, got nerfs to both of their tactical squadrons, the attack rockets and the torpedo squadrons. Both of the reload times on those squadrons was lengthened by about 25 to 30 seconds, which was a good start. And then, of course, more nerfs to Petropavlovsk. Again, this is another notable one because this is one of the few times we've ever seen them come back and quote-unquote like redesign, re-engineer a ship's armor profile after release. Certainly this long after for release, for them to come in and finally, again, like I said immediately, make meaningful nerfs to this ship. Oh, thank God, right? Maybe the thing's finally being brought under control where it won't ruin some competitive play, but we'll see. And then Ragnar and Zorky both got a little bit of nerf to their main battery load, and Tier 8 Premium Russian carrier Chkalov got a nerf to both of her torpedo and bomb damage, and I think that was necessary because that ship is really, really mean and really, really good at what she does. Okay, moving on into June, we had, this was kind of the American Independence Day celebration. So we had the American Destroyer model rework, starting with Mahan. You had Mahan, Benson, Fletcher, and Gearing all got their models updated. And big changes there. I'm loving the way they look. And then, of course, if you dig down into the weeds of the patch notes, there was actually some hit point reallocation along the way, which I thought was interesting. I didn't notice that at the time. I had to go dig into like the detailed patch notes to find that, but that was curious. They moved all of those ships, had some health moved out of the bow and into the superstructure, which I suppose makes them a little easier to damage. But I still think all in all these were good changes. Gearing in particular got a very solid buff with the torpedo angles. I think on her stern. Her sternmost torpedo launcher now has way better launch angles for those torpedoes than she used to. And I noticed, Happa pointed it out to me, and as soon as he pointed it out to me, I noticed it right away. Like, I don't think I noticed it until he was like, hey, did you check that out? I was like, oh, crap, yeah, look at that. That's amazing. Of course, USS Black returned as an event. You could finally earn a Black again. They took her out of the steel shop a while ago. You could earn her for this. You could earn the right to purchase her, and I think eventually she is going to come back for coal. They brought convoy mode back. I mean, yay. To me, convoy mode is dead. As long as you tell the opposing team, oh, these are the possible routes. This is where to find your enemy. Convoy mode is dead, right? I played like 2 games of it and was like, this is a waste of my time. But telling, if I'm trying to defend the convoy, you're literally telling the opponents where to go. That's ridiculous. Make them earn it. Make them use their planes or their destroyers or whatever and scout out and find us, and then figure out how to get shots and attack us and whatnot. Don't tell them, oh, guys, look, here they are. You'll find them in one of these 3 choke points. Good luck. Like, that's just lambs to the slaughter. So I think this mode is ridiculous the way it's currently designed. Finch Battlecruiser Early Access, still going on. We finally got a new map. Guys, realize this. Our first new map since Greece was added in the form of Faroe Islands. I've only played this map a handful of times, but I really like the vibe of it. It reminds me a lot of old school Islands of Ice, which is a map that I still to this day sorely miss. We had a couple rounds of brawls, some more sub and matchmaker changes here in 11.5, and some minor balance tweaks. Basically, the American battleship split, Kansas, Minnesota, and Vermont all got buffs to their repair party cooldown. Minnesota and Vermont got detection buffs and some armor improvements. And I'm not talking about necessarily thicker armor so much as it was like armor reallocation, kind of shifting around where some plates were to make them a little more survivable. And then 2 more nerfs in going on there. You had USS United States, her tactical squadron torpedoes, got nerfed again, as they should have. And then Vermont. I listed this Vermont AP shell change as a nerf because to me it was, right? It absolutely was, because the ship apparently, based on the videos I saw, I didn't own one until recently, used to be really, really good at like dumpstering things at long range. Like the AP shell penetration at long range was so good. And now it just feels so bad, right? I just got my Vermont and like firing AP at long range. I'd rather fire the HE. The AP like bounces off of everything. It's like, oh, it's a light cruiser. Bounce. Ugh, give me a break. So I call this a nerf. However, as I understand it, when you push in a little closer, the AP penetration of those shells has actually been buffed, so it's a little better. So nerf, buff, however you want to look at it, I look at it as a nerf. All right, so if you're new to this video series, what's going to happen now is we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the server population statistics. First thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the NA server, and this is a quarterly view. You see there, each data point, each column is a quarter and a year. So we go from third quarter 15, which was release of the game, all the way here to second quarter 2022, all the way on the right. What I do is there's a website, and you'll find it linked down below in the video description, that I go to, and then I basically just try to zero in the window to basically say, I want to see the 3 months that start on 1 April and end on 30 June for this particular video. And I look at the average daily concurrent players for that particular 3 months, which for this past 3 months was a little under 7,500. Now, in the context of this graph, that number looks really bad. And honestly, it's not good. It's really not good. I want to caveat a lot of what I'm going to say over the next probably 15 minutes as I go through this for a couple of things. One is, historically, the second quarter is almost always Warships's whatever. It's always the least populated, almost always. Regardless of anything else going on, second quarter historically is almost always the worst. Have a look, right? Go all the way back to second quarter of 16, right here. Worst quarter ever in the history of NA, right here. Second quarter. Second quarter 17, a little better, but look at the drop. First quarter, second quarter. First quarter, second quarter. First quarter, second quarter. Second quarter 20 is the exception, of course, right? This is first quarter 20. Second quarter 20 is our all-time exception. Of course, we all know why. Because we were all told incorrectly to stay indoors, right? Stay at home, lockdown. And of course, that worked out so swimmingly. But for the moment, it meant lots more people online playing video games. So second quarter 20 is the aberration, right? But again, first quarter 21, second quarter 21. First quarter 22, second quarter 22. So we expected a downslope. That's normal. What concerns me, I think, is the depth, the steepness of the downslope, let's say. I am of the opinion, and you can sort of see this going on since that meteoric rise in the second quarter of 20. I mean, after that, as lockdown started to ease for a lot of people in a lot of jurisdictions, especially here in North America, you were always going to get lower numbers. Like, it wasn't going to keep going up. It wasn't sustainable, okay? But we've now had, what are we, 8, basically, with the exception of first quarter 22, which is usually due to Christmas stuff mostly, we've had 8 consecutive quarters of declining player base. Now, these numbers in here are fairly steady. They're minor changes, right? 5%, 3%, whatever. These are small changes. The big one last year, of course, first quarter to second quarter, and now we're seeing, again, first quarter to second quarter. It's a worrying trend, right? It's a worrying trend. What I believe to be happening, and we talked about this in the previous few quarters, is I believe we're starting to see a reaction of the player base to the decisions being made by the development team. In terms of, we're forcing subs down your throat. Get ready, open wide, here they come. As an example, right? Super ships have generally not been exactly very well received by a lot of people, right? You work all the way for a tier 10 ship, you get there only to find out, oh, guess what? Unless you've got 50 million credits laying around, you're still outclassed. Sucks to be you. So yeah, I think you're starting to see that. And this is a trend you're going to see as we look at the other servers. So on NA, there's where you're at. And you'll notice this number hasn't been this low. We're actually a little lower than the summer of 2019. Our worst quarter in 3 years. And this was back during the chaos of the carrier rework, right? Remember, the carrier rework happened right here, first quarter 19. And the next 2 quarters, while they scrambled to unscrew all the stuff they had screwed up, were pretty, you could tell the population was down. And we're now basically back in that realm. We're not worst quarters, right? Have to go back to 17 and 16 back here, these guys, right, to find worst quarters. But you aren't that far off. So we really got to keep a close eye on this. As we head to EU, you'll see the same sort of thing, right? We had the big drop in 20 from first to second, the big drop in from first to second in, first to second in 2021, and another big drop here, first to second in 2022. So again, you expect this, right? But again, I come back to what's worrisome to me is just like NA, we're now down like summer of 2019, like some of the worst quarters that Warships has ever had. You're down in those numbers again. For a 7-year-old game, that, I mean, to me, I suppose that's kind of a good thing, right? It means that they're at least holding steady in terms of players. But the turnover in the player base is continuing to be a real problem, right? So EU in about the same place. Russia, of course, has been on the downslope for many, many years. This is one of the 4 places we see that the first to second quarter downslope most pronounced. Always has been this way. Always has been this way. And over here, no exception, right? Russia down to their worst quarter ever. Absolutely their worst quarter ever. But then again, each of the preceding second quarters, with the exception of, again, 2020, has been the worst quarter ever, almost, right? Like 21 here, basically the worst ever until this quarter. Right, so the previous second quarter was the worst until we got to this second quarter. And then before that, it was third quarter 19. And before that, it was second quarter 18. And before that, it was, you see what I'm saying? Like, this is normal, but it is, again, the trend line for Russia has been bad for years. Let's see. Let's have a look at Asia. Now, Asia has been bucking this trend for a long time, right? The Asia absolutely adored the carrier rework. Look at this rise from first quarter 19, all through 19, player base in Asia went up. Into lockdown, Asia player base really solid, and they've done a brilliant job of retaining and even growing the player base even further after kind of some of the worst of the lockdowns and everything started to end in late 2020. They've shown basically steady growth, winter quarter this year being the exception, but like in general, nice and steady uptick. So Asia, population-wise, Asia's doing great. Like, nothing to argue about there. This slide is essentially the 4 previous slides all smashed into one. So you can sort of see the trend lines, the quarters where Asia has been more popular than NA, the quarters where NA has been more popular in Asia. They've sort of traded back and forth over the years. But one of the things I want to point out now, Asia, for the first time ever, right here, you can just see it, for the first time ever, was more populated than Russia. Right? This green is Russia, and Asia is right here, the red. So Asia is now officially the second most populous server in Warships in terms of daily logins, right? NA has kind of been in third place for a number of years, the RU server usually taking over that spot. Asia had kind of outpaced NA for a while. NA bounced back. Asia fell off a bit. And then NA has kind of fallen off. And while Asia has continued its upward trend, RU has finally kind of, I won't say collapsed, but fallen below Asia. So in terms of like most populous servers, most active servers, EU remains on top. They have been basically since way back here in the third quarter of 17, right? That's been the trend for a very long time. But now Asia's in second, RU's barely in third, and NA at the bottom of the list just because I guess NA players are more fickle. I don't know what to tell you. Now, if I take all of these numbers and smash them together, we get this slide, okay? Which is the total average daily login across all 4 servers. And again, you're looking at second quarter is bad. Generally, second quarter is bad. Second quarter. But we're getting down to some of these historical lows, right? So what we want to see, like what Wargaming wants to see in the third quarter is they want to see that number tick back up. I'm not optimistic, okay? But we'll see. That'll be an important thing to look at when the time comes. But it also means that the game's population, after a several-year kind of boost here, partly due to COVID, and I guess partly due to a variety of other things, is kind of falling off now. And I believe it's due to many of the decisions being made by the dev team. Now, admittedly, some of this trend line, and I say this every video, some of this trend line is driven by the drastic fall off from Russia, right? If you go back and you look at the Russia slide, like this has been going down from the day the game launched in Russia, right? Like just about. They've gone down always, okay? So that drags the overall average down. So what I like to do, this is all servers, what I do is I like to pull out the Russia server and say, okay, well, what does it look like if I just take RU out? Now, if I take RU out, things don't look quite as bad, okay? The overall trend line still positive. Again, largely due to steady growth over the last 2 years in Asia and a lot of early growth on EU and NA during 18 and 17, okay? Unfortunately, the trend recently, and we'll have another slide on this in a minute, is still not very good. And we're still down here, 28,000 versus, again, like just above where we were when we had carrier rework. So yikes, not so amazing. Second quarter trends. This is, again, what you've sort of seen this along the way, right? The second quarter historically has around 35 to 36,000 players daily logging in, and we are basically right where we expect to be. So it's not a bad quarter. Like, nobody would look at this quarter in my mind and say, oh, this was really bad. Because historically, it's about exactly where you'd expect to be, in my opinion. However, to me, the longer term trend is a little more concerning. So we got to keep an eye on it. And I think I've been saying that for a couple of videos now. And one last slide here at the end. What I like to do is throw in just the last 6 months. What do things look like? And again, you're looking at kind of steady downward slopes for EU here in yellow, RU here in green, and NA here in orange. The NA one is a little flatter, but it's still a downward slope. Asia in the red, the maroon, kind of brown here, the only server showing any kind of growth over the last 6 months. I really do think that the population numbers are reflective of what has been coming out of St. Petersburg, what the dev team has been doing. I think players are, I mean, it's been happening for a while, right? If you go back and you look at, hang on, where's my overall, right? You look at this slide, right? This is global population, right? Of course, COVID high, second quarter 2020, you would hope to maybe retain some of those people as we get into 21. Like, oh, good, things are returning. Things are kind of getting back to normal. But no, as we've done more and more sub testing and super ships and yada yada yada, it's just been I mean, we had a little bit of a recovery back into last year, but now we're on that second quarter cliff again. What we have to keep an eye on is, does this in third quarter, does this never tick back up? If it ticks back up again, we'll shut up. I can shut up, right? I'll be like, okay. So it's just sort of we're seeing the expected trend. But if there's a significant drop from second quarter to third quarter, I think that's a pretty big warning sign. And I said this in yesterday's Scuttlebutt video, I'm cautiously optimistic that as we head into third quarter, we're going to see the results of some of the changes of the turnover and leadership of the development team out of St. Petersburg. I really want to believe this. However, no announcement has been made yet that gives me that impression, that gives me the impression that there is change. There is change in the works. There is change coming, right? Every patch notes we've seen, the progression of all the various in-game events have all looked like they have for the last 2 years, right? It's the same formula, right? All we do is we change the ship nation and the ship type. Oh, this month it's American battleship. This month it's Italian destroyer. Next month it's French cruiser. Like, it's just one to the next to the next to the next. When are we going to get away from that? Is there going to be something different coming? I don't know. Like I said, I want to believe, but we're still just in the early days of trying to see if that leadership change is going to make a difference. Anyway, guys, there is our review of the second quarter here in World of Warships. Hope you enjoyed that. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you next time.